Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Around the Corner podcast series, where we'll discuss the latest scientific discoveries, technological advances, and what is around the corner and what is about to come as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today with us, we have Dr. Thierry Paulmier, who's an emotional intelligence expert. Thierry, I'm so excited to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you, Zina. And thank you for receiving me. I'm very glad to be here with you and to have this nice conversation with you. It's a pleasure to see you again. And I hope we are going to enjoy our time together.
Absolutely. I'm already very much looking forward to this conversation. People would ask us, okay, emotional intelligence expert, why are we having this conversation? I say the reason why we're having this conversation is because we should absolutely be having these conversations. First of all, I really would like to learn more about you. What is Thierry's story? What brought you here? Tell us about your journey.
Okay, my journey started by a PhD in innovation economics, I would say. So I started to work on the national innovation systems and catching up economies. So, and I did research on South Korea and Taiwan, and I tried to understand their catching up process in high-tech industries. And from that, after my PhD, I moved to the UN, to the UN agency in Geneva, a technical assistant agency specialized in trade promotion, export strategy. And I spent 7 years there doing technical assistance all around the world, mostly in Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. And then I quit and I moved to New York to do an acting school.
Acting school?
The American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I was already an actor as an amateur, and I did a conservatory as an amateur. But then I decided maybe I could do something as a professional, because I was very passionate about acting and stage acting. And meanwhile, I start again a new PhD in political philosophy, and because I was a bit sick about the Homo economicus, which is the anthropological hypothesis of the economists that says that we are supposed to be rational and only focused by we're only driven by our interest, our self-interest, and that we are always doing a kind of cost-benefit analysis to make our decisions. So that's a bit the paradigm of the economist. And then working on political issues, I decided to work on emotions. And because I have the feeling that emotions were a strong driver of our behavior. And actually, I tried to develop a theoretical model trying to explain how to govern people through emotions. And basically, I've identified 4 emotions: fear, envy, admiration, and gratitude. And I tried to defend the idea that with these 4 emotions, we can govern people with positive emotions, admiration, gratitude, and with negative emotions, fear and envy. And when I completed this PhD, I realized that what I have developed was useful and relevant for companies, administrations, and was quite practical and useful. And then I started my own business, and I started a startup called EmoThink. So EmoThink, so it's a bit a merge of emotion and think. So it's all about try to, and I offer my services now to different institutions to help them to be a better manager. Mostly, I'm working a lot on management, but also in communication and team building. But how can we mobilize these 4 emotions to manage, to build a team spirit, or to negotiate or to communicate?
That is so fascinating. Economics, UN, then acting, and then emotional intelligence. What a mix.
Yeah, that's my journey. You know, there is a nice speech by Steve Jobs saying that you can only connect the dot backward. You know, have you seen this Stanford?
No, I have not.
Yeah, you should. It's a 2005 commencement speech by Steve Jobs in Stanford University, and he was saying that you do things you don't know why you do them, and at one point of time you realize, looking backward, you manage to connect the dots. And
very true.
And it's very true for me. I mean, I'm really definitely agree with him that for my part, I always try to follow my inner voice, and it drove me to different places, and at the end of the day, all these things get together.
Somehow I absolutely relate with that because I kind of feel the same way in my own journey, which is somehow everything that I've learned in the past has been a piece of the puzzle where it's brought me here. And I don't know if it was by design or if it was, I don't believe necessarily in fate or anything, but I do believe that each component of that made me be the person I am and made me be have the right elements for what I'm doing right now. And going back, as you mentioned, it is easy to kind of trace it back and see it. So it's great to hear that story. And you mentioned emotional intelligence and how a lot of our decisions and a lot of the advances that we have as a human being, they are based on our emotions. Is there a relationship between emotional intelligence, innovation, and technology?
Yes, absolutely. I would say the relationship is mostly, or first of all, is upstream, is in creativity. And even upstream of creativity is in curiosity, is emotions are what moves you and makes you be moved by some objects or some people. So emotions tell you what is important for you and what attracts you. So especially one emotion is very important for innovation and technology is admiration. From the all philosophers, Plato and Aristotle, they have identified one emotion which is at the origin of philosophy, which is admiration. That you need to admire something to start to think about it. So to have a kind of reflection about it and try to, then you start to look at it, to contemplate it, and you are so curious about it that you try to understand it. So every process of reflection needs this emotion. And the more you're admiring an object, the more you're going to spend time to try to understand it or try to think about it and to create about it. So I would say that admiration is one critical emotion that makes you be curious and makes you be creative. And also I would say emotions are your driving forces for your behavior. So when you have to be innovative, that means you have to be passionate about a craft, about a field. And what makes you passionate about it is the admiration you have for this craft or for this object. So I would say that the time you can spend, the energy you can invest into an innovative process is given by your emotions. So I would say it's really your driving force through the innovation process, but at the upstream, it's already what is going to select for you the emotions, especially admiration, the objects you want to focus on. Mm-hmm. So if you cultivate your emotional intelligence, especially in the approach I have, which is to cultivate admiration and gratitude, I would say that the more you cultivate admiration, the more you cultivate beauty, the more you want to create and you want to improve the world and make it more beautiful, the more you want to create things. And I would say all the artists say that emotions are their materials. I mean, mm-hmm. You cannot be a painter or a musician or a poet or any artist is driven by his emotions. So artistic creation is mostly emotions made concrete by an object. So you want to make concrete through a poem, through a song, through a painting, through a sculpture. So I would say that a part of the emotion, which is the artistic innovation, is fully based on your emotional experience.
What is emotional intelligence? And in a nutshell, what is emotional intelligence?
So emotional intelligence. So this word, this concept has been developed in the 90s by psychologists specialized in emotions and has been popularized by Daniel Goleman with a book called Emotional Intelligence. And what we put in this concept is 4 faculties. The first one is self-control, self-knowledge of your emotions. So are you able to understand the emotions that moves you? At this moment, I feel anxious. I feel angry, I feel jealous, I feel indignant, I feel ashamed, I feel guilt. So are you able to connect to your emotions and name them? It's very important to be able to name your emotions, because you start to be aware of it, and you start to be able to maybe do something to dispel it or to promote it. So it's self-knowledge, first faculty. Second faculty is self-control. Once you're realizing that you have these kind of emotions, anger, fear, envy, guilt, what should I do to get rid of these negative emotions, to dispel my anger, to dispel my fear? So that's the second faculty you need. And it's really, of course, strongly related to the first one. You need to be self-aware of your emotions to be able to self-control. And to have two other faculties, the third one is to be able to understand others' emotions. So am I able to detect around me all the people, the emotions they experience? This person is anxious, this person is jealous, this person is ashamed, and so on. So am I able to connect to their emotions, to put myself in their shoes? It's there that empathy play a critical role. Are you empathetic to people around you? And the fourth faculty is influence of others. Now, once I have detected that you're sad, that you're angry, that you're scared, that you feel ashamed, what should I do to help you to get rid of your negative emotions and get back to positive emotions? So that's the four faculties we put behind this notion of emotional intelligence. Someone who has a good emotional intelligence is able to understand, he has a good self-knowledge of his emotions, self-control, and is able to do the same job for others and help them to get better emotionally.
That's quite interesting. And maybe this is a bridge between what we discussed before, which is, okay, emotions, perhaps on paper, it seems so far away from what we're discussing with this pandemic task force, Advanced Material Pandemic Taskforce, that we've started to use advanced materials to look at what are going to be the needs of the post-COVID world. But if we think about it, you and I discussed design thinking and the fact that as a part of this, and we're really grateful to have you as a part of the France chapter of the task force, one of the things that we discussed was that the need that we have for developing this map of needs, which looks at the different sectors and the needs that are going to be developing in different layers and different tiers, and that perhaps we have to look at these needs more and more of a human way. And maybe there is a strategy, maybe there is a new innovative way for us to look at this, instead of scientists sitting in their lab and thinking, okay, I think that the doctors are going to be needing masks without any human interaction. We sit, and a lot of our scientists and researchers, we sit in our labs and we think for other people what they are needing. So we started talking with you about how do we use design thinking, how do we use this emotional and human aspect of this to design better, to understand the needs of the people and the needs of the next few years ahead of us better. I would really love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about design thinking. I think in the design thinking approach, one thing which is very useful and relevant for our work here is to be human-centered. So it's to start from human beings' needs facing a new environment, a new situation. So put ourselves in the shoes of any person or some categories of people. Actually, in design thinking, we work on some stereotypes. So if old people, young people, so you can, or women or men, I mean, you can try to categorize type of people and see what is their journey through the crisis, and what are the emotions that they are supposed to experience, the negative emotions, and how we can address this, their fear, their shame, their guilt, their all the kind of emotions that we can detect through the crisis. And based on that, I would say, I mean, my first idea was that there are two things that are really changed by the pandemic is breathing. Breathing is we need to breathe safely, and we are not able to breathe safely now and we need masks. So we need technology to be able to breathe safe. And another thing is we need to touch safely. So everything has need. Then maybe here for materials, there is something that we can bring. We need, if we want to get back to normal, we would be able to breathe and touch safely everywhere we go. So we need material that maybe have self-cleaning property, or they kill or capture the virus. I don't know, but because, for instance, today I was in the library, and once I finished to read my book, they put all the books in quarantine, and they cannot give these books only in 2 days because maybe they are contaminated by me. So overall, all the process are slowed down because of the fact that we are risk to be contaminated by anything we touch. So, I mean, my first thinking was about the big change in our daily life is about touching. I cannot touch anyone, or I cannot touch anything except if I clean my glass again, my hands. Sorry, my hands again. And of course, every time we worried about what we breathe, and we always have to wear a mask in every public place or closed places. We need something to breathe. So my first idea was about the needs we experience in a daily life is where I see two big changes is these two, and I don't know to what extent your expertise in materials can help to address these two needs. That's just a first idea. I don't know if it makes sense for you.
It does, and I think that you also brought up something even more important, which was we are driven by our emotions, and for us to come up with solutions, if there is no adoption or people sticking to those solutions, they are useless. And sometimes those elements of shame, for example, you talked about, or I'm not feeling comfortable with wearing masks. Imagine if we designed a whole hazmat suit for people to walk in. If people are not comfortable because their emotions cannot be seen, if they don't want to adopt it, okay, we can come up with the best solutions in the world. There will be no adoption because people will not adopt it, because it does not, at our core, we still want to look a certain way. We still want to feel a certain way. We need a certain freedom. And that is not going to change. That is going to, maybe we'll stick by that for a couple of weeks, but in the long run, some people risk their lives just because they want to feel human and normal again. Yeah. And we need to understand those if we're going to be designing them. Otherwise, our solutions that we spend years to develop are going to be useless.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of shame, I think it played a role here in France, for instance, to delay the moment where people started to wear masks, because it's not in our culture to wear masks. I mean, it's not like in Asia, in Korea, in Japan. They're used to do that. Every time people get sick, when I was living in Korea, I was surprised to see people wearing masks in the street or in the subway. It's just because they were sick and they didn't want to contaminate people. But when you wear a mask and nobody else wear a mask, people see that you're sick, and you can feel ashamed, or you can feel isolated. And it seems at the very beginning of the crisis in France, we were saying maybe, the mask is not so that useful. And so nobody wanted to wear a mask. And because it look a bit ridiculous if you wear a mask in the subway, everybody will look at you, unless everybody is wearing it. But so as long as there was not a governmental obligation to wear a mask, people were delaying wearing a mask, and it seems ridiculous. Well, I'm not going to wear a mask, and so on. So it's about shame. So it's ridiculous, but if people would have taken that seriously earlier, we would have maybe avoided a lot of other problems. So we have to think about all the emotional aspect of any decision to be sure that people will make the right decision.
I agree. And I think in this pandemic, this is really like a test tube, right? We are living through this time where for years and probably decades, we'll be looking at the data that we gathered and say, okay, how much we learned about human behavior, about consumer behavior, et cetera, because when I think about it, I have been staying at home for 4 or 5 months, and my behavior has completely changed. But at the same time, I'm okay staying at home. And I think that maybe this isolation will actually stick with me. And I don't feel very comfortable going outside anymore because I don't feel safe. I feel very uncomfortable and unsafe, and we talked about is going into an elevator. So what if my behavior from now on will change, where if there are more steps, I will actually take the steps? Or how about more people actually trying to avoid elevators? What does that mean for the building design of the future? Because if behavior sticks for the next few years, then we cannot have elevators and people refusing to get into elevators, and then we'll have this kind of mass chaos because people want to get to work and they have these long queues. And so I think for us to be aware of those human elements and emotions when we're thinking about what is going to happen is extremely critical. And I think it's a fact that is not quite looked at. That is why I'm so excited to have you amongst us, because with your help and with your expertise and knowledge, perhaps we could marry these ideas that on paper they look like they shouldn't be, they not necessarily have much in common, but perhaps we could come up with a more of a holistic vision for design of what science can do to meet the needs of human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true that people have experienced this period very, very differently based on, of course, where they were confined, and some people lived that very well, and some have suffered from this period, and they are so happy to be released and to be free again. And some people, maybe you're part of them, that are a bit reluctant to go back to normal and to go out and see all. So that means there is a little trauma, emotional trauma for some people, and of fear, and it has to be addressed. How we help people to be sure that they can go back to normal. But I was told that, in some companies, some people refuse to go back at work, at their office, because they are still afraid of being contaminated. And we have to address that. For some people, there's been a trauma. We don't know which part of the population there's been a real trauma, and they are not able to overcome this, and they don't want to, they are not sure that they can get back to their normal life. And so some innovations could help. It could give them this comfort that, now it's going to be okay for you. Don't worry. You can go to the elevator, you can go to the subway, and nothing would happen for you. I mean, that your life is safe. So it's true that we have to take into account also the fact that a part of the population has maybe been traumatized in a way, and it's an emotional trauma, and we have to address that, because we cannot let people stay at home forever and or decide to organize their life only in their house. We need to help them also to get out of this. Even though they are happy, I mean, well, of course, if they're happy, they can do what they want, but it's just it would be a pity if we lose them. Right?
It is true, but we are also kind of living a life where we're getting exposed to things that before we thought would not stick. For example, who thought that the productivity of some of our functionalities at work would actually go up even if we don't have access to each other? And that is something that we're seeing in some elements. We're seeing productivity go up in certain segments, and in some elements with virtual work and distancing, we're seeing that the productivity goes down depending on what segment they're in. For example, we're seeing that apparently IT companies are thriving because the kind of people who are software developers, that actually feel a lot better working from home. So their productivity goes up. But then when we look at the trends, we see that a lot of apparently millennials and a lot of creative jobs where they thrive in brainstorming, etc., they don't feel motivated to work from home. So their productivity for those segments are going down. And it's just amazing to me, this other side of how our lives are being impacted by this pandemic. And And I know that you mentioned as a part of your journey, you actually worked at the UN. I'm really excited to actually hear about that. And the reason why I'm excited about that, besides my personal interest, is because I do believe that this pandemic has opened up a whole new way of us relating to each other. I use an example of, like, for example, malaria. Okay, yes, we know how deadly it is, but somehow, even if we know it is and we know people are suffering, somehow I'm not internalizing it because I don't know anybody who has died from it or has been impacted by it. So, but this is different because I've been impacted by it. Everybody in the world is impacted by it. So it is raw and emotionally it hits home. And it's allowed people to actually come together and say, okay, now we're ready to work together. Now we've got a common thing, and maybe we should use our science for good. Maybe we should use our work that we're doing to solve some of these issues. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, on how maybe the good thing about, maybe a silver lining in this is that it's enabled all of us to kind of come together and work on a bigger platform to see what we can all do together.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, I think it's a bit too early to say. I mean, for instance, your initiative, it's a kind of illustration of what you have said, that you try to gather people with different expertise to try to find solutions for the whole world. So I think there are some initiatives like that show that, yeah, maybe it has been an opportunity to create a kind of global community and see that the problems are global. So we need global solutions and we need global solidarity. So I definitely hope that it will be the real trend. But at the same time, during the crisis, we have seen some countries, they try to get the mask before some others. There was some competitions to get the different materials needed for fighting against the pandemic. So we also risk that the national interest could be also raised by the situation. People start to close their borders and say, okay, now we need to stay together and not being in contact with the rest of the world. I mean, some nationalistic trends could also be awakened by the crisis, because in France, I have seen that in the news. Some say, yeah, you see, that's because of the globalization. Now Chinese, they come to France, and of course they contaminate our country. So, and even Trump said, yeah, it's because of Europeans. Europeans didn't stop the Chinese, so they came to America, and now we are contaminated. So
now it's the opposite. Right now, the Americans are not welcome in Europe anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So it's changing all the time. But I hope that the movement, you have been one of the pioneer with creating this task force, will be the major trend that will be the fruit of this pandemic, that the global awareness will be stronger, and that solidarity, and I hope we'll see, when we will get a vaccine for this virus, how we distribute it around the world, whether we manage to find a way to distribute it fairly, even to countries who are not able to buy it, and if the country who is going to develop it is not going to keep it for him, and say, okay, that's mine, so now you need to pay to get it. So I hope that we will find a very altruist solution to that, and it will be for humanity a kind of a challenge, that we managed to create a public service, or a global public service, or global public good, and that we enhance the solidarity between the nations. So, but at least I think you, by your initiative, you have created you're part of this dynamic.
we're trying, right? I mean, we had to do something. And I tell people I couldn't sleep at night because I felt like I needed to do something more. And it is good. It was really heartwarming for us to see people around the world. I mean, 15 different countries that are part of this right now, and people who are kind of gathering around and saying, what can we do together? And I want to understand. I know that there is perhaps a look of, okay, we think we're going to go this far, this fast, but the reality is that it is extremely challenging. And you and I were talking about your experience in UN and how becomes this monumental task sometimes to be able to move something that you think on the surface it might be easy to solve, but overall we see how challenging it can be. What was your experience like working in the UN?
Well, UN has been a very important experience in my life because it was a kind of dream that came true, to work at the UN.
Why was it a dream for you?
Because, it's funny because when I was a kid, with my parents, we visited the UN headquarters in Geneva, and my parents bought me a little flag of the UN, with blue flag, and I put it in my room. So, but this I forgot for many years. And then when I decided to work for an international organization, I remembered that I had this flag, and that I was really impressed because in Geneva you have an alley with all the flags of humanity, of mankind, and in a way I said to myself, one day I will work there. So so when I arrived in Geneva and having my UN laissez-passer and my badge, and I had the feeling I was on the roof of the world, on the top of the world. And now I can contribute to the well-being of mankind. This kind of a bit naive things, but it's good to have ideals. My experience when I started to work through the administration of the UN, I realized that it's a big administration. It's heavy. It's not always efficient, and there is a lot of problems inside that makes the impact of the UN in many fields not that great, especially in development. As you know, development agencies have not too many success stories in terms of development. How many countries have been developed by IMF, World Bank, UNDP, and all UN agencies? Actually, none. Okay, so over 60 years, 7 years of effort, investing billions and billions in many countries, there is not so many countries that have managed to be developed by all this aid and all this support of international organization. And then I realized also that maybe UN was not always a solution, but sometimes also a part of the problem. So creating a problem of corruption, problem of distorting mindset locally, creating a lot of distortions that was not that. So my perspective changed a bit about the impact that I could do as a UN official. So now I'm free to speak because now I'm not part of it. So I quit now a long time ago. So I can speak freely about it. But I would say, I would strongly encourage people to try to go there if they are really, they feel that they can make a difference through international organization, but don't have so high expectations, because in any case, at one point of time, you will be disappointed, and maybe you will see that the impact you can have on the reality is very, very, very tiny and even sometimes negative. So then you realize maybe I should do something else if I want to make an impact, in the world. If I start, So, but that's just my personal experience after 7 years, and I quit. So I have quite a few friends still there, and they are happy to continuing their career in this organization, and it's good for them. But so you have to make your own reflection on why you work there, and to what extent you think you can do something useful and through your job. And
absolutely,
if not, you have also to decide maybe you should do something else.
It's a great point because you said that, perhaps sometimes we have ideals and we have this ideal of I'm going to do this and it's going to be this great feeling. And you know what? That feeling lasts for a little bit. And it is that moment of joy, the moment that you had your badge. Great. I mean, it's sometimes it is really hard to replicate those feelings. So the first interaction with something, first time that you get your PhD and somebody calls you a doctor. I mean, you cannot replace those feelings. So, but for us to be realistic, that yes, don't think that perhaps going to something you're going to be doing, you're going to be changing the world through this platform. Maybe you can, but the chances are probably very small. Maybe this is not the right platform. But having those realistic expectations, but at the same time enjoying your time, if that's what gives you pleasure. Go ahead.
Absolutely enjoying your time, but be brave enough not to waste your time once you realize that you're wasting your time,
Absolutely.
So when you realize that you cannot do any difference there, and maybe you stop to learn more and anything more, and you realize that maybe you won't make anything here. So it's not easy, but sometimes you have to make some difficult decisions as to change radically and go somewhere else, because you can make something better elsewhere. And so for me, it was a very important step in my life, but I would say, and it helped me to understand more the world, because I traveled in many countries. So thanks to the UN, it has opened my mind extensively and widely. So for sure, it has been a very beneficial for that. But at the same time, it was below my expectation, let's say, of what I could do, and then that's why I changed of life.
That's a great way of ending this. I really do agree with you. I think that it is a great experience. We learn a lot, but knowing that if you're not getting that emotion, which we talk a gratification, right? That self-gratification from it at some point, having the courage and being brave enough to say, I'm not satisfied here. There is more for me to discover somewhere else. Even though it was my ideal, I did this. Now it's time for me to do something else to address that kind of emotion that makes us happy, makes us wake up in the morning and be excited and passionate about doing something.
Exactly. That's really the main criterion, to be happy in the morning when you wake up to do what you do, and you feel that you're at the right place.
Absolutely.
And that you're not wasting your time and your life. And that's very important. And so I mean, I didn't know where I would go from that. Sometimes you know why you leave. You don't know where you go. You just want to leave. So when I left the UN, it was more to leave somewhere than to go somewhere. I mean, there was the acting school, of course, was a very nice opportunity, but at the same time, it was a way to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not sure that I wanted to be really a professional actor. I knew that I was passionate about acting, but I think even in my mind, it was already clear that I won't be the new Brad Pitt or the new George Clooney, right? So I was already lucid about that it will be a very fun time, but that maybe my journey won't go that far in that direction of acting. It was more about satisfying a passion and dedicating 2 years to learn more about the craft of acting, but not to be an actor. And actually now it serves me a lot in all the workshop I run, and it's still in me. I mean, all of what I've learned as an actor is still part of me, and I'm still feeling like an actor even though I don't act.
That is quite fascinating. You've had a great, you have the fascinating life, and I am so glad that we got a chance to discuss this today. But before I let you go, I want to ask you a question. What are you cooking tonight?
What I have cooked, you mean? Because
Okay, what did you cook
I've
that you
already
ate?
eaten. Yeah. So I had a quiche with salmon and spinach.
Salmon and spinach. What else goes into it? So eggs. Do you make the crust yourself, the quiche?
No, I buy. I have to be honest. I buy it already ready. It's ready for eating.
Ready for eating.
I bought it. I did only the carrots with the quiche.
Okay, great. So you did cut the carrots. That's great.
What?
So I said you did cut the carrots. So you did make some effort into.
Yeah, so I did something manually. You know, I used my hands in a way. But no, I'm not a good cook, and I'm not enough patient for that. I mean, cooking requires, I think, patience, and yeah, it's not one of my strengths, I must say. So I will never invite you to enjoy my cooking.
Well, I absolutely love cooking. So if you invite me, I'll come and I'll cook for you. How about that?
Okay, that's great. Let's do that. Yeah, that's a good.
Okay, I've got an invitation to go to France after these.
I let you all my kitchen, and yeah.
Great. Now I've got an invitation. We just have to wait for these travel bans to actually lift. So as an American, I can actually come to France.
I don't even know what the situation. Your ban in Europe.
So it is not easy right now to travel to Europe. It's yes.
I guess so, yeah. Because I have a couple of friends, they managed to come back from New York to Paris a few weeks ago. So I was thinking that maybe people could travel.
So if you are a national of Europe, if you're European national, you can easily go back and forth. If you're military, you can go back and forth. But others, you have to ask for permission for some countries. You have to have certain documents. It's not as easy as kind of it used to be, obviously. But you know what? We still have something. We know that at some point maybe our paths will cross, and I'll get to come to your place and we can cook, and maybe we can do another podcast.
Yeah, it would be a pleasure. The world is full now, so it will be a pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Thierry. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, you have a nice, lovely afternoon, and you still have time.
Yes, I do. Yes. Well, thank you so much.
And let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.